Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. The generation after Musa and Harun alayhi salatu wasalam saw a different community altogether. The community that had now grown up in slavery at the hands of Fir'aun and his people were no more. And this was the generation of Dawood alayhi salatu wasalam. Prior to Dawood alayhi salatu wasalam, it is assumed that the Nabi of the Bani Israel that lived in the area of Al-Ardul Muqaddasa was Yusha bin Nun or Joshua. The generation after Musa alayhi salam, the progeny thereof, comes to Yusha bin Nun and asks Yusha bin Nun that can we also take on the Amalika people and reclaim our homeland, just like how the promise was given to Musa alayhi salam and our ancestors before us. And indeed, the promise still remained valid. However, it would come at a test. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informs the Bani Israel who are residing in the vicinity of Al-Ardul Muqaddasa at this point in time that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will appoint upon you a general, and his name will be Talut. And immediately some of them rebel by saying that how is it possible that Talut could now be in charge of our matters? وَلَمْ يُؤْتَ سَعَةً مِنَ الْمَالِ, and he has not been given any wealth. This was the wicked nature of some of the members of Bani Israel at that point in time. And they expressed it by rebelling against the Nabi of their time and the leadership of Talut. Nonetheless, those that chose to now wage war against the Amalika people to reclaim Al-Ardul Muqaddasa and Al-Quds al-Sharif in particular, they now sought to follow Talut. They were further tested by the river, wherein Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran Kareem that Talut tells them, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Inna Allaha mubtalikum bin nahar, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will test you with the river. Whoever drinks from it a bellyful will not be able to follow us. But whoever abstains or drinks from it just a scoop or two will be able to continue on the journey with us. Very few people remain. When they come to the outskirts of what would one day be the bustling city of Al-Quds al-Sharif, which was later built and commemorated into a city, but Al-Masjid al-Aqsa and the precincts thereof still standing at that point in time, they were confronted by the Amalika, who were mushrikeen, polytheists, and they refused and mocked at the Bani Israel, saying that how is it possible that you people defeat us? As was customary in that time, the war started or the campaign started with individual combat. And when asked to present their best soldier, the Amalika presented Jalut, known in Latin as Goliath, a towering behemoth of a man that now challenged anybody in his way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raised the courageous Dawood alayhi salam, who was not a Nabi at that time. Talut promised that whoever defeats this Jalut fellow, I will give my daughter's hand in marriage. He will now be elevated to the level of leadership. Dawood alayhi salam, who is considered to be the youngest of his family, who was a shepherd, and he was assumed to be in his late teens at this point in time, he stands up to the challenge. Till the end of time, people will read in the Quran, وَقَتَلَ دَاوُودُ جَالُوتَ, that Dawood alayhi salam had killed Jalut, and the assumption is that he killed him with a single stone at the end of his sling. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. When they saw this, the Amalika people ran pell-mell in all different directions. The Nabi of the time, and it is assumed Yusha alayhi salatu wasalam is being referred to, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam describes the incident of the arrival of the Bani Israel in Al-Ardul Muqaddasa in this particular context, that a Nabi min al-Anbiya waged jihad in the path of Allah. And as it was about to, the sun was about to set, he made dua that, oh Allah, hold back the sun. Because if the sun has to set, as was customary in those days, there will be a truce. The enemy will be able to regroup and we will lose the advantage that we currently have. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala held back the sun for that Nabi at that point in time. And there is another incident years later that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala held back the sun, which is also connected to Al-Ardul Muqaddasa, that when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam returned from Masjid al-Aqsa, and the kuffar of Mecca now taunted him, that how is it possible that you did this journey that you are telling us you did in such a short period of time? One of the proofs that he presented is that there is a caravan that is coming, and this caravan has got a greyish camel in its lead that they lost, and it's here within a few or an X number of days. When it was the number of days that Rasulullah ﷺ said that the camel will arrive, they all assembled on the outskirts of Mecca to see the arrival of this camel or this caravan. Where is this caravan that he is speaking about? According to a narration, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala held back the sun until that caravan came into Makkatul Mukarramah safely. And the proof that Rasulullah ﷺ had now presented that this is the lead camel of that caravan was now verified. Here again in Al-Ardul Muqaddasa, centuries before, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala holds back the sun for a Nabi of Allah engaged in jihad who is assumed to be Yusha bin Nun at this point in time. Nonetheless, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants them victory. The incident is much more detailed, but this year sparks a new generation of the Anbiya of Al-Ardul Muqaddasa. After Yusha comes Dawood alayhi salatu wasalam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran that we made iron soft for him, that he was able to produce goods of steel, of warfare using iron. He had a beautiful voice that even the birds would glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when Dawood alayhi salatu wasalam would read the Zabur. All the kingdoms around him would be subservient to him, and it would be a land or a time of great prosperity. Thereafter came the son of Dawood alayhi salam, Sulaiman the wise, the majestic ruler, whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him in Al-Ardul Muqaddasa technology that had never been used before. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the ability to communicate with the creatures of the earth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the wind subservient for him, that he would travel using the wind to far off lands which had never ever been seen before. But what is also noted, that being Anbiya alayhi salatu wassalam and being stationed in Al-Ardul Muqaddasa, they utilize their strength and their facility for the greatness or to elevate the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam reconstructs Al-Masjid al-Aqsa using the jinnat and the power and the strength of the jinnat under his control. During his time, Hudhud, the hoopoe bird who was in the army of Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, brings him a message whilst he is in Bayt al-Maqdis, that there is a particular kingdom, the kingdom of Saba, who's led by a queen, and she and her people do not believe in Allah. This was the famous incident of Bilqis that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to in the Quran Kareem. Hudhud goes back with a message. This queen eventually comes submissive to Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, and to show her how powerful he is, the very throne which he sits on is brought even before she could arrive in a blink of an eye to be decorated. So when she sits on it, she could not even fathom how is it that my throne is here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says that amongst one of the methods that Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam showed her to impress upon her the ni'mat and the bounties of Allah, that a bridge of glass with water flowing underneath was created before her arrival. Qawarir, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, she thought it was water, but in reality it was glass that she was walking on. All of these technologies and innovations and all of these worldly things was simply to impress upon her that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us ni'mat and bounties that you could not possibly think of, but we use it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Al-Ardul Muqaddasa and Al-Masjid al-Aqsa in particular focuses and is the witness of this great period of prosperity that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam, that although they were righteous people fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they had the consciousness of Allah, they had the desire for da'wah and calling people towards deen, they did not allow the wealth of this world to beguile them. And even when the wealth of this world may have attempted to beguile them, they put it straight by even sacrificing it. It was the case of Sulaiman alayhi salam, that when he went out to inspect his horses of war, and when he now felt this ujab or this desire in his heart that, you know what, Allah Ta'ala has given me so much of the wealth of this world, and he focused on the wealth of this world, he immediately became detached, and he proved his detachment by slaughtering them then and there. Not, of course, a direct lesson for you and I in this time that we are living in, but for him an apt lesson to show that if something beguiles you from the remembrance of Allah, you need to remove it from the equation immediately. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the great barakat sent upon Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam and his father Dawood alayhi salam, and the period of justice that prevailed for all of mankind. And the platform and the stage of all of this is Al-Ardul Muqaddasa and Bayt al-Maqdis in particular. Thereafter, when Sulaiman passes away, comes another generation of Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam, Zakaria, Yahya and Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, which will be the focus of our next discussion, inshaAllah.
واسأل عنا له منا قل علامات انت تدريبا مدعيكم غايب عنا والحكم ميوز في الغيبة.